Waltz and goes after Jeffrey Goldberg. Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, what is now becoming very, very obvious, very clear as the dust begins to settle after this so-called scandal that gripped the media, gripped the Democrats, gripped Capitol Hill, and began to embroil the Trump administration yesterday, is that when everything is said and done, Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, and I want to stress this to many of you, because many of you have a life, you have better things to do than to read The Atlantic. The Atlantic is an anti-Trump rag. It is in many ways the leading magazine of the resistance, la résistance. It is, and I said yesterday that it was Bill Gates' ex-wife. My bad. It was Steve Jobs' wife. My bad, the late Steve Jobs. She's the one who actually owns The Atlantic. And the reason why The Atlantic was funded and continues to be funded by her is to bring Donald Trump down. For Donald Trump to fail, for Donald Trump's administration to be utterly blown up on the tarmac. So that is the stated purpose of Jeffrey Goldberg and that rag that he calls a magazine. So it's very obvious now. Goldberg is a liar and a fraud. That there's no question now that after all the evidence that has come out yesterday, Goldberg grossly exaggerated and embellished, and in some instances actually lied. There were no war plans discussed or shared on that encrypted group chat text under Signal, that app that Goldberg claimed that there was. There wasn't any. That's a complete lie. Secondly, no classified information, none whatsoever, was leaked or discussed or mentioned in that group chat text. So, Goldberg lied again. Furthermore, as Trump laid out, I thought very strongly yesterday in the Q&A, in a press conference that he had with the media, where there was a real feeding frenzy, it had zero impact whatsoever on the entire U.S. military campaign, the strikes, the missiles, the drone attacks on the Iranian-backed Houthi terrorists in Yemen. None whatsoever. So, it's a nothing burger. Literally, it's a nothing burger. What are we talking about here? Just stand back objectively. If no classified information was discussed or leaked, if the war plans were not revealed, and it had zero impact whatsoever on the actual military operation itself, where's the scandal? Where's the so-called violation of the Espionage Act? Where's the problem? Yes, you don't want reporters inadvertently or accidentally added to a group chat which involves or comprises of your entire national security team. That goes without saying. That's the real story here. The real story here is not that the administration violated any laws or compromised top secret classified information or compromised our war plans, because that's a lie. And Goldberg lied just, by the way, as he lied about Trump in 2020, calling slain U.S. service members suckers and losers. Everybody who was present at that meeting said Goldberg lied. In fact, even John Bolton, who's an enemy of Trump, said, hey, I was there. I was the national security advisor at the time. No, Trump never said that. That's not true. So Goldberg has a history of being a liar. He has a history of making stuff up or grossly embellishing. And that's clearly now what happened here. And so the question to me is not whether Mike Waltz should lose his job or Hegseth should be forced to resign or whether there's a real, genuine scandal here. No. The real issue is how the hell did Jeffrey Goldberg get onto that group chat text? He is one of the leading anti-Trumpers in the so-called fake news media. So why would anybody be talking to him? There's no reason to talk to this man. He shouldn't be in your contact list. He shouldn't be in your, you shouldn't have his phone number on speed dial. You should have nothing to do with this guy. So Mike Waltz now gave an interview to Laura Ingraham last night. He also spoke with President Trump. And here is, I think, the picture now that we're starting to get. It appears that an NSC staffer, a National Security Council staffer, and a top aide to National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is the one that actually put the group chat together. He's the one that put Rubio on, and J.D. Vance on, and Hegseth on, and Tulsi Gabbard on, and CIA Director John Ratcliffe on, Stephen Miller, the Trump's top advisor, Steve Witkoff, his envoy. So he put all of them into that group chat. It appears it is this staffer that also added accidentally Jeffrey Goldberg. Now, if this is true, and Walt says that it is true, and they're going to get to the bottom of why was Goldberg added, and do you talk to Goldberg on a regular basis? Why would you be talking to Goldberg on a regular basis? There's no reason to be talking to Goldberg unless you're someone who's secretly leaking against the administration. I believe that staffer should be fired. Okay, and the rumors in Washington are, and it's been widely discussed in the media, that that staffer is Alex Wong. Okay, I'm not saying it is him 100%, but that's the name now that's being thrown out there by many in the media, both publicly and privately. Now, if it is Alex Wong, who is a top advisor to Mike Waltz, he's got to go. He made a mistake. He's got to be fired. This inexcusable mistake. Or he's been talking to Goldberg, and that's how Goldberg got, or it was deliberate. He was paid to put Goldberg on to try to blow up Trump's presidency and pick apart his cabinet. Now, it's clear that Goldberg sat on this story for over a week and timed the release just a day before Gabbard, Ratcliffe, and Kash Patel, the FBI director, were scheduled to testify in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee. It's also now coming out that Goldberg has been coordinating with top Senate Democrats. Sidney Blumenthal, Senator Blumenthal, my bad, Dick Blumenthal, Danang Dick, Senator Dick Blumenthal, Ron Wyden, all of these that sit on the Senate Intelligence Committee apparently were given a heads up from Goldberg days before this story allegedly broke and was published in The Atlantic. So this was a coordinated effort by Goldberg and the Democrats to try to knock off Hegseth or Waltz or both. Listen now to Donald Trump. That's all they kept asking him. Does Waltz need to apologize? Are you standing by him? Should National Security Advisor Mike Waltz resign and step aside? Listen to Trump's answer. Roll cut 4. Mike.
The information was not classified. Do you think that Mike Waltz made a mistake, and does he need to apologize?
No, I don't think he should apologize. I think he's doing his best. It's equipment and technology that's not perfect, and probably he won't be using it again, at least not in the very near future. What do you think?
That's true. I agree with you. Let's get everybody in the room whenever possible.
A lot of times you find out defects by exactly things like that, but I don't think it's something we're looking forward to using again. We may be forced to use it. You may be in a situation where you need speed as opposed to gross safety, and you may be forced to use it, but generally speaking, I think we probably won't be using it very much.
So basically, here, let me translate this from Washington speak to non-Washington speak. I told Mike Waltz, I don't want you to ever go on Signal again. It's not secure. It's not safe. Either you use a secure communications network that we completely control, or we do it in the Situation Room. Now, I'm going to let you off the hook this time, but don't ever let this happen again. And we're going to find out about that staffer. We're going to find out whether this was accidental, whether it was deliberate, and has he been talking to Goldberg? In other words, we're going to get to the bottom of this. So Trump now is refusing to cut loose Waltz or Hegseth. I agree with him completely. This was an attempted manufactured scandal by Goldberg and the Democrats to turn a perfectly good chat group text into Watergate 2.0. Agree, disagree, all of your calls next. 6:18 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, a couple lines are open if you want to jump on. What do you make now of this clearly media manufactured scandal? There's no question about it now. They tried to make something out of nothing, and they tried to destroy Trump's cabinet and his national security team in the process. Trump, to his credit, held the line, didn't take the bait, stood by Waltz, stood by Hegseth. I thought gave an absolutely masterful performance yesterday in this presser with reporters who, I mean, they thought they were sensing blood in the water. There's no question. It's been a feeding frenzy. They thought they had Trump on the ropes. They thought they could take apart his cabinet and derail his agenda. And instead, Trump held the line. Now, very, very quickly, I want to read this. This is from Mark on Messenger. And I think he pretty much hits the nail right on the head. Jeff, just as we all suspected, another Democrat hoax, just like Russia, or impeachment number 1 and impeachment number 2 and January 6th and all the bogus indictments on Trump. When will the Democrats ever learn? You cannot break Donald Trump, and you never will. In fact, Jeff, I'm proud to see that the Trump administration, people in it like and respect each other. And it's nice to see them joking around with each other and getting along so well. Nice try, Dems, but back to the drawing board for the next hoax. I agree. They tried, and they tried, and they tried, and we'll see what the fallout is, but it looks like you got to try harder. Back to the drawing board, as Mark put it, because this scandal doesn't seem to have legs. We shall see. Now, 2 quick points, and then I want to go to the phone lines. 617-266-6868. What really, I think, took the sting out of the Democrats' attempt to turn this into Watergate 2.0 was actually, ironically, not Waltz, who I thought handled himself very well, don't get me wrong, but Ratcliffe, the CIA director, where at the Senate intelligence hearing yesterday, you had buffoons like Senator Mark Warner of Virginia yelling, screaming, shouting, "You put classified material on an unclassified system. Heads need parole." And as Ratcliffe calmly told him, and in fact kept repeating it over and over again, and every time he said it, you can see the air coming out of their balloon. The Democrats were like, this is just taking all the air out of this so-called scandal. Ratcliffe said, look, this was all installed on government devices, government computers, including, by the way, at the CIA under the Biden administration. If you're unhappy with Signal being used, don't look at me. Look at the Democrats before the previous administration. They put Signal on every government device. They put Signal on every government computer. He said, in fact, he goes, I want you to know at the CIA, all our communication system was wired into Signal. He goes, in fact, on the first day on the job, that's what they told me. They go, we want you to know that changes were made under Biden. Yeah, what? Everything we do at the CIA, the way we talk to each other, communicate with each other, everything is now done through an encrypted messaging app, Signal. Oh, really? Yeah, that's how it's done. So if you want to communicate with people, you do it through Signal. So as Ratcliffe said, he goes, look, I don't know how to try to say this to you. It wasn't just lawful and permissible. It's standard operating procedure within the government, within the intelligence community, within the national security apparatus that you Democrats approved of, you installed. So the more, now again, look, the counter argument to me is obvious. And that's, I think, what Trump told Waltz in particular. I don't care if Biden does it. In fact, the fact that Biden does it means we shouldn't do it. Like, it's not an excuse to say, well, Biden installed it all across the computers and these devices. Let's keep using it. Because obviously we just got burned. We had a chat with top national security people, and look, this clown Goldberg was the one who got accidentally invited in or deliberately invited in. But the fact of the matter is, they're trying to make it seem like this was an exceptional use of Signal, a rare use of Signal, an irresponsible use of Signal. And Ratcliffe kept saying, hey, look, guys, I'm just telling you, we were told to use Signal. Who? By my predecessor. So that took so much of the sting out of the Democrats' attempt to turn this into the mother of all scandals. Now, second point, and I think there's no getting around this fact, okay? There's just no getting around this fact. How the hell did Jeffrey Goldberg, of all people, and I don't believe in coincidences, I don't. Of all the reporters, of all the journalists, of all the editors in Washington, this guy, who may be the number one Trump hater in the print media, okay, this guy who's been after Trump's throat for the last 10 years and whose magazine, as I said, is the tip of the spear, the number one magazine for the resistance against Trump, he happens to be included of all of them? I don't believe it. It's impossible. I don't believe it. It's impossible. The real scandal now is, why was Jeffrey Goldberg included and who included him? When it came out, and Waltz was very categorical, Waltz said, and he handed his phone to Trump, he said, look, here, go through my phone, go through my emails. I don't know Jeffrey Goldberg. I never communicated with Jeffrey Goldberg. I've never spoken to Jeffrey Goldberg. I've never emailed Jeffrey Goldberg. In fact, apparently it came out that Waltz told Trump, have Elon and Doge go through all of my stuff. Here's my phones. Here's my email. Just go through it all. You're never going to see Jeffrey Goldberg or anybody associated with the Atlantic magazine. So when Mike Waltz said, look, I'm telling you, it wasn't me. I had Alex Wong, or it appears Alex Wong. I had a staffer. He was the one that set up the whole meeting on Signal. And names were added through the staffer. I gave him a list. I want all these people on, and make it happen, Alex. Apparently, he was the one that added Jeffrey Goldberg. So now the question is, how the hell was Jeffrey Goldberg added? Was this truly an accident? Was it deliberate on the part of the staffer? Does this staffer maybe inadvertently exposed himself or revealed himself to be a mole who's been talking to Goldberg and other anti-Trump media behind everyone's back? That's the question now. Heads need to roll. Your calls next. 6:33 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, in front of all the cameras, the media yesterday, standing beside President Trump, said that he takes responsibility, those were his words, for what happened in terms of that group chat that Jeffrey Goldberg, this sleazebag reporter, editor, was inadvertently added to the Signal encrypted group chat text, saying, no, it's my fault. I bear responsibility. Doesn't matter if it was an aide who did it. Ultimately, the aide is accountable to me. I'm the boss of the aide. That's my subordinate. And ultimately, the fault is mine. So let me ask all of you. It is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's siding, roofing, and windows. Because Mike Waltz was the one who organized the group chat that inadvertently allowed Jeffrey Goldberg to be included, should Waltz apologize? Should he? Many are demanding that he give an apology. Many in the media want an apology. The Democrats want an apology. Should Waltz apologize? A, yes. B, no. I want to hear from you, Kuhner Country. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, KUHN as in National ER. You can also vote via X. Again, I was active last night on X. My handle there, at the Kuhner Report, all one word, KUHN as in National ER. Listen now to Mike Waltz saying, you're all missing the story here, as he told the media. There was no classified information. No war plans were discussed. Nothing that would hurt national security in any way, shape, or form was leaked or released or mentioned in that entire discussion. Goldberg is lying. The question is, and as he put it, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but the question is, how the hell did this guy end up on that group chat? Roll cut 9, Mike.
How did a Trump-hating editor of The Atlantic end up on your Signal chat?
You know, Laura, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but of all the people out there, somehow this guy who has lied about the president, who has lied to Gold Star families, lied to their attorneys, and gone to Russia hoax, gone to just all kinds of links to lie and smear the president of the United States, and he's the one that somehow gets on somebody's contact and then gets sucked into this group.
Yep, that's the question. Now, look at that staffer. It was the staffer now, they're saying was a top staff official under Waltz that set up this group chat. Have Elon go through this guy's phone, this guy's email, him and his Doge people, and they'll find out how often he's been talking to Goldberg and what he's been telling Goldberg. And look, there's a mole, and you got to find that mole. Agree, disagree. Larry in Leominster, you're going to kick us off, Larry. Thanks for holding, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. Amazing how what can happen in 24 hours.
Oh, it's a sea change. It's an absolute sea change. It went from war plans and classified information to basically, honestly, a mature, professional, intelligent policy discussion and disagreement over whether we should bomb the Houthis. Because that's essentially what they were discussing.
This is like chapter 39 of We Got Him Now. Do you remember Oh, God, it was probably maybe 6 or 7 years ago. It was State Farm ran a commercial where one person's calling for her agent and she gets a refund, and someone standing next to her goes, "I don't have State Farm, but help me out." And it's a guy with a fishing pole with $1 on it chasing her around going, "Oh, you almost had it." This is what we're looking at. And I would never tell Sandy or Mike how to run the system, but I would revisit yesterday's poll question and ask again, do you think Pate should be fired? I think you'd have a much higher outcome of no, he should not.
Well, Larry, let me ask you this. Do you think Waltz should apologize? Does he owe the country an apology? I'm just curious.
No. We should hopefully have learned our lesson from this whole Me Too movement, the whole woke stuff where people were apologizing left and right and still they destroyed them. That's what they're begging for. When one side is begging you to do something, you go, "Nah, I think I'm good." There is nothing to apologize for. Again, Ratcliffe brought it up at the hearing. He says, listen, the previous administration put this on there. You know, it might not have been prudent for us to use it, but it's not like we came up with this dumb idea on our own.
Well, you know, Larry,
go ahead.
Larry, let me play the clip because you nailed it. Look, I think this was, I think that it was like the needle that popped the balloon. And look, Ratcliffe is not the most engaging speaker. You know, he's a spook. He's our top spy master. He's got to be guarded in how he speaks. But essentially here, look, just his words are damning. Here it is. Here's Ratcliffe in front of the Senate Intelligence hearing yesterday. Roll cut 13, Mike.
At the outset, you made a couple of comments about signal messaging using encrypted apps. So that we're clear, one of the first things that happened when I was confirmed as CIA director was signal was loaded onto my computer at the CIA, as it is for most CIA officers. One of the things that I was briefed on very early, Senator, was by the CIA records management folks about the use of signal as a permissible work use. It is. That is a practice that preceded the current administration to the Biden administration.
So there, I mean, they knew, and then if you, Warner goes nuts at this point because he realizes it's all going up in flames now. He's lost the thread of the narrative. In other words, oh, darn it. Darn. Well, if this was all, rewired under Biden and installed on every computer and every device, and they're telling them, no, everybody use Signal. Whatever you need it for, just use Signal. It's encrypted. It's safe. It's secure. Well, where's the malice? There's no malice. Larry, final word to you.
Let's flash back to the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago. What did we hear? We heard stacks and stacks of files just everywhere, nuclear secrets everywhere, and everybody ran with that. And I don't mean I'm talking about the mainstream media. And it turns out it was just a bunch of cover letters that the FBI set up themselves and took the pictures of to make it seem like this is what's happening. And I'm stealing it from Dan Bongino's show. He's like, they're always trying to tell you a story, never the story. And that's what this is. Drop the mic. Drop the mic, Larry. They tried to manufacture another scandal, and it just blew up in their face. Larry, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. And that's why I thought Trump was so good yesterday. He basically said, look, just tell the truth. Just literally, full transparency. Just tell the truth about everything. And the media, they don't know what to do now. Trump holds the line. 6:49 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. Okay, the media, the Democrats, and I think clearly now parts of the deep state, if what we're reading is true, that this was a top national security official who set up that Signal group chat, an aide to Mike Waltz.
So it appears the deep state is still trying to subvert Trump's administration. And look, make no mistake about it. Waltz himself openly said this yesterday, to his credit. He said they're trying to derail our agenda. And they're trying to do it by picking off cabinet members. They wanted to create faux outrage, a manufactured media scandal to take me out, to take Pete Hegseth out, to take apart the entire Trump national security team, to embroil this administration in scandal after scandal after scandal until it was essentially going to be reduced to rubble. And they lied, and they used Jeffrey Goldberg to push what is now clearly not just a false narrative, but literally a pack of lies. There were no war plans. There was no classified information. All of it was completely made up. And it had no impact whatsoever on the actual military campaign and the missile and airstrikes that were launched against the Yemen Houthi rebels backed by the mullahs in Tehran. Very quick. Listen now to Mike Waltz. This was him at a cabinet meeting yesterday with all the journalists there, and they were calling for his head. Listen to Waltz's response. Roll cut 8, Mike.
You asked about lessons. I think there's a lot of journalists in this city who have made big names for themselves, making up lies about this president, whether it's the Russia hoax or making up lies about Gold Star families. And this one in particular, I've never met, don't know, never communicated with, and we are looking into and reviewing how the heck he got into this room. But I'll tell you what, the world owes President Trump a favor. Under Biden, global shipping was shut down. Pinprick attacks, months between them, our destroyers being fired upon dozens of times. President Trump took decisive action with his national security team, took out the head missileer, knocked out missiles, knocked out headquarters, knocked out communication sites. And for once, as we hear, as you all hear from every one of our allies, thank God for American leadership again. Thank God for American strength.
I got to tell you, it was very, very strong. And he's completely right. No one is actually talking about what Trump did in Yemen. They were under Biden. They were relentlessly harassing not just American ships, and I don't mean our military ships. That yes, but our commercial ships, European commercial shipping, world commercial shipping. So this was killing the global economy. It was hurting the Europeans. It was hurting the world. It was hurting obviously our economy. So Waltz is right. The world owes us a big thank you. And the Europeans in particular, because they have a lot more shipping in that part of the world through the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, and then into the Mediterranean. And that's where the Houthis are blocking everything. And it's, again, we're bailing out the world. We're saving. This is trillions, literally trillions of dollars in terms of the global economy. That's what we just did for the whole world. Biden did nothing. Nothing. He allowed the Houthis to run wild. And Trump comes in 10 days, he fixes the whole thing. And frankly, if you really want the truth, the fascinating part, this is what's getting lost in all this. They're actually, if you look at the text thread, it's a fascinating discussion. And I like a lot of J.D. Vance's points. And, in the end, he said, I'm going to support the mission. I have reservations. But, he's the one, and they're all kind of agreeing with him. He says, only 3% of our shipping goes through that area. Europeans, it's 40%. So again, the Europeans, the freeloading Europeans are, freeloading off of us. And we're bailing, and he goes, and JD says, we're always bailing out the Europeans. Again and again. And will they even say thank you? No. And you've got Stephen Miller and you've got Pete Hegseth. You've got to say, you're kind of right. I mean, we're going to do this. The president wants us to do it and we're going to do it well. But, you are right. And then Miller, this was so fascinating. Miller says, you know what, JD, I like your point so much. Let's go to the president and say, the Europeans are going to have to pay for this in some way. We're benefiting them. We got to get some, as he puts it, extract some kind of an economic benefit out of this from them. Like, in other words, they just can't be riding our back for free over and over and over again as we do all the heavy lifting. So my point is, Waltz is right. It's an incredible success what they did to the Houthis. Decimated their leadership, smashed many of their defense systems that they had, their air defense systems, their rockets, their missiles, their command and control sites. I mean, just cut the Houthis off at the knees. And a restored freedom of navigation and freedom of shipping on the high seas. Basically global trade. And what? Less than 2 weeks, 10 days? With not a single loss of American lives? Not one loss of an American life? It was almost a perfect operation. And instead, this is what we got, should they have used Signal, Pete Hegseth, Mike Waltz? This is outrageous. Classified information, which is really not classified information. War plans, which really weren't war plans. They're on a classified system. This is what they're trying to turn into a big story. 617-266-6868. And you heard Waltz, and he was more adamant in private with Trump. Never spoke to Goldberg. Don't know Goldberg. Don't have his phone number. Never emailed the guy. How this guy got on that chat group, I don't know, but we'll find out. Donna in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Donna, and welcome.
Thank you for taking my call. I am so nervous. I'm a long-time listener and first-time caller.
Welcome, Donna. Welcome. You're among friends. Don't be nervous.
Thank you. But when I was listening to this today, the thought came to me that if Biden administration set up this signal for all of them to use, then could it be possible that Goldberg was on all of them because they knew that he would be the one that would go after President Trump to take him down in any situation?
I think it's very possible. And they didn't want to say it yesterday at that cabinet meeting. But you can see Trump's eyes, Waltz, Hegseth, all of them. You can see that their eyes, the back of their eyes are like, were we just set up by Biden? Or to be more accurate, Biden's team. You see, they took it on faith. Well, the one thing they're not going to screw around with is the national security of the United States. So if they're going to put Signal on every government computer, CIA computer, national security computer, every government phone, every government device, obviously it's because it's safe. They've encrypted it and they've managed now to take it to a level that it's almost impenetrable. You just assume that. Now you can see their wheels are turning. And the other thing, look, Donna, this is now coming out. The Biden regime were holding these national security discussions, chats, texts, whatever, using Signal. That's now, there's no denying that. But here's the other thing. They routinely, I think almost every time, had reporters on. So they were giving reporters literally privileged access to national security discussions as a way to buy off the media. In other words, this was their pact. It was this. You carry water for us. You defend us. You be our mouthpiece. And you guys will have the skinny. You'll have the inside scoop on everything. You can listen to our national security advisor, talk to Anthony Blinken, who will then talk to the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, and you guys will have all of this internal access. So you can write your best-selling books. Remember, they keep writing these best-selling books, Bob Woodward or others, and then the president said, on April 23rd, the president, Biden said this. But then Lloyd Austin responded by saying he was nervous. He was nervous about what happened with the attacks between Gaza and Israel. But then Anthony Blinken said this, and I'm going to fly to Israel. And you read this, and you're like, how does he know all this? Like almost like word for word, sentence for sentence, because they were given privileged access in exchange for basically sycophantic, favorable coverage. So what I'm starting to think, and I think this is why Waltz is saying, let's not fire the guy just yet. Were reporters automatically put onto these group chats? In other words, it's almost built into the system. So, you get the National Security Advisor, the Secretary of Defense, the CIA Director, head of DNI, blah, blah. And then reporters are automatically click, 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 click. They're put on the group chat. Because that's pretty much what happened under Biden. And the question is now, were they setting up Trump to fail? Now, I'm going to play a cut, and I want to get your reaction, Donna, okay? Because you can see this is where Trump is thinking. Because he even says, he goes, from this point, he says, hold on, where's the cut? I want to get the cut. That where he says, yeah, okay, here it is. Here it is. Roll cut 4, Mike.
The information was not classified. Do you think that Mike Waltz made a mistake, and does he need to apologize?
No, not that. My bad. That's my bad. Not go to 2B, Mike. 2B.
Do I plan to ban who?
The use of Signal to communicate from senior officials.
Well, I don't know I don't know anything about Signal. I wasn't involved in this, but I just heard about it. And I hear it's used by a lot of groups. It's used by the media a lot. It's used by a lot of the military, and I think successfully. But sometimes somebody can get onto those things. That's one of the prices you pay when you're not sitting in the Situation Room with no phones on, which is always the best, frankly. But the best is to be there. In fact, oftentimes I've been in fact, just last week I was in the Situation Room on something very important, and we had a couple of people hooked up by line, and I said, cancel the line. Sorry, fellas. What you do is we'll tell you all about the meeting, because I know people do get on those lines, whether it's Signal or anything else.
See, so I mean, that was very revealing. That's very revealing. So basically what he's saying is, look, we inherited this from Biden, and don't be a bunch of hypocrites. All of you in the media use Signal. Wink, wink. You guys were in a lot of the Biden conversations. Don't play stupid now. It's all across the military. It's all across the CIA. It's all across national security. And, he's basically saying, I like to do it in the room, the Situation Room. So it's only us. The door is closed. The walls are impervious. Nobody can listen in. Nobody can eavesdrop. Nobody can know what we're saying. And I even had people on the phone, and I said, no, drop them. We'll just tell you, we'll give you a briefing. Drop them. So this way, nobody can spy on us. Now, Donna, what Trump is basically saying is, I don't trust what Biden did. He's saying it without saying it. He doesn't want to make an accusation that he can't prove. But you can see it's like, were we just set up? Is the system itself not reliable? And, basically now vulnerable to being penetrated or hacked or having these journalists listen in? So basically he's telling everybody, no, from now on, we're not doing anything over Signal. Nothing. It's going to be in the Situation Room, or it's going to be on a very secure communications network. So everybody's now being told, don't trust Signal. Don't trust what's on your government device. Don't trust what's in your computer. Donna, final word to you.
Well, that's what I'm thinking is the Biden administration will stop at nothing to, sabotage his administration. And I think that they need to make sure even every room isn't bugged and every, phone and whatnot. Like I say, this, I think if it's apparent to me, then everybody knows that they just automatically on this phone call so they can get Trump in any way they can, and it has to stop.
Donna, you are 1,000% correct. And please don't be a stranger. Call again. 617. She's right. I'm telling you, she's right. It's obvious now. And again, just sit back a little bit. Weren't we all, myself included, a little bit naive? So you try to assassinate the guy. You try to imprison the guy. You try to take him off the ballot. You try to bankrupt him. You try to destroy him. You do everything in your power to prevent him from coming to power. You steal an election against him. And suddenly now we're just going to give him a nice, peaceful transition? We're not going to try to bug his phones or his national security team? We're not going to try to set up a system where we can sabotage him and hack him and listen in and try to spy on him and surveil on him by using, technology and wiring it into these computers and into these phones, as if the Biden regime wouldn't be that diabolical and that devious. So, in a way, in retrospect, it's like, Ratcliffe is like, hey, I come in my first day on my job. They're saying, no, Signal's in your computer. You got to use Signal. No, it's on your phone. Here's your phone, government phone. It's Signal. You got to use Signal. And you're like, okay. And you got to ask yourself, this is from Biden. I don't know. So that's why Trump is saying from now on, the Situation Room. Or it's got to be a secure network that we know no one can hack into. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Vince in Germany. Thanks for holding, Vince, and welcome.
Morning, Jeff. I'm going to give it to you fast, okay? The Signal app, haven't they learned their lesson from the first term? They know Obama had left a leave-behind network. They know Biden would do the same thing. For crying out loud, they try to assassinate this guy twice. And, I really put the blame on Waltz, because Waltz is retired Army Special Forces, and he wasn't enlisted. He was actually a commander, a Special Forces commander. So he's used to what the protocols are for sharing information. And furthermore, I don't care if it wasn't classified. The fact that they're having open discussions on what they should do with the Houthis is enough to let them know they shouldn't be discussing it on an open network, a closed network, any other network that they know is not secure. All right? And let me tell you something, Goldberg. I didn't really know much about this Goldberg guy until I put two and two together, because I do watch Washington Week on PBS on occasion, and I'm like, man, what a hater. To sit there and watch his show, you realize how much of a hater he is, all right? And this, they said he was sitting on these texts since 11 March. Now, they knew that Senate Intel Committee event was scheduled, weeks out.
That's right.
And he sat on it until the night before, and then he drops the bomb. So they're all lined up, ready to go with the spitball questions, And frankly, Ratcliffe he wasn't too sharp on his feet with it. Neither was Tulsi Gabbard, for that matter. Don't these people learn anything? They cannot trust anything that's come from the previous administration. They know they have their moles embedded in those committees. They know they have their moles embedded in those agencies. And let me finish with this, okay? Goldberg, if you dig into his past, and this is open source, this is actually on Wikipedia, all right? He served in the Israeli Defense Forces, and he was actually a guard at the infamous Kitzoit prison down near Gaza, down near the Sinai Desert. He was like one of their lead prison guards, which tells me he's probably Mossad, okay? And if he's Mossad, he's definitely CIA, MI6. They're all tied in together, Jeff. These people are all tied in together. So I would just say that Trump better secure amateur hour, because his administration isn't going to last with buffoonery like this.
Vince, thank you very much for your call. Look, Goldberg is deep state. There's no question he's deep state. He's CIA, he's Mossad, he's MI6. That's where this guy gets his information from. He's a scumbag. That's what he is. He's an absolute scumbag. And he's a mouthpiece for the deep state. There's just no question about it. And to me, that's why I don't that he was accidentally on that call. Bull, you know what I want to say. Bull crap. Okay. Bravo Sierra. BS. No, he was deliberately put on that call. And let me just, Grace and I were having a discussion about this over dinner last night. And I said to her, look, she was a journalist like me in D.C. She was an editorial writer at the Washington Times. I said, if you were accidentally put on a group chat whereby, the Secretary of State, the National Security Advisor, the CIA Director, the Secretary of Defense, and they're discussing a military operation in the Middle East, what would you do? And Grace right away said, I'd be the first one to say, hey, look, guys, I don't know how I got included on this. You need to be aware. You accidentally included me on this. Like, this is not secure. In other words, tell them right away. I'm listening in. I'm watching all this. I can see all this. Instead, this scumbag was listening and taking screenshots and listening, according to him, and taking screenshots. What kind of a human being does that? Deep state. Deep state scum. This guy is CIA all the way. 617-266-6868 is the number. And remember, it was the deep state that tried to bring down Trump in his first term. It was the deep state that tried to destroy him when he was in the wilderness. And now it's the deep state striking back again. Agree, disagree, all of your calls next. 718 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. Okay, my friends, it's that time of the week again. Truth or troll? Take it away, Sandy.
And now, America's favorite game show, where you get to decide on the Kuhner Report. This is Truth or Troll.
So this week's entry, President Trump was having his daily confab in the Oval Office with the press. And this is yesterday with NSA Mike Waltz was there as well. And the president was, of course, asked about the Signal controversy, which included a hostile reporter on the group chat when they were talking about military actions against the Houthis. So this was what President Trump said in the Oval Office.
They used a app, if you want to call it an app, that a lot of people use, a lot of people in government use, a lot of people in the media always want to use the best technology. This was the best technology for the moment. But again, it wasn't classified, so they probably viewed it as being something that wasn't that important.
And who told you that information was not classified?
Another question,
which is your national
please.
security advisor?
Okay, so asked about the classified information, the president saying, next question, please. It wasn't classified, and then he briskly moves on. Is he telling us the truth about no classified information, or is he trolling us?
That's the question, Sandy. Truth or troll? That was CNN's Caitlin Collins. So when he said that there wasn't any classified information discussed, it was Trump telling the truth, or was he trolling the media? You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, Kuhn as in national ER, or if you prefer, Kuhnerman. I'm very active on X. My handle, at the Kuhner Report, all one word, Kuhn as in national ER. Before I go to the phone lines, Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, he has lied about Trump in the past. He pushed the Russia collusion hoax hard. He made up that hoax about Trump calling slain service members suckers and losers. It goes on and on and on. He is a rabid, virulent Trump hater. Listen now to Trump. When asked about the app, asked about Mike Waltz, asked about whether it was inappropriate to have this discussion over this Signal app and over Jeffrey Goldberg being allegedly put on that app. Listen to what Trump had to say about Goldberg. Roll cut to a mic.
That's an app that a lot of people use, and somebody got on. I mean, happened to know the guy's a total sleazebag. The Atlantic is a failed magazine. Does very, very poorly. Nobody gives a damn about it. This gives it a little bit of a shot. And I will tell you this: that they've made up more stories, and they're just a failing magazine. The public understands that.
So, in other words, more fake news. More fake news from another fake reporter. Angelo in Rockland. Thanks for holding, Angelo, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Angelo?
I'm doing good. So, it looks like the Democrats played a little three-dimensional chess prior to the election, anticipating what was going to happen. And you know something? Imagine if they used the three-dimensional chess going for Benghazi and Afghanistan and all these other things. Instead of fighting against America and for the American people and trying to ruin our way of life, imagine if they were on Team A, what we can accomplish. It's amazing. And a lot of your callers from Germany and Donna hit the nail head. They put that signal in place so they can infiltrate. And we also have moles out there that they got to be careful of. And I'm sure they're aware of it. What do you say, Jeff?
I think you hit it. I mean, I really think you put your finger right on the pulse, Angelo. And the question now is Trump is going to have to, he's going to have to ferret out these moles. He's going to have to weed them out. And he's basically telling everybody, don't use Signal. Don't trust what the previous administration did. And so they're going to have to find a way to be able to communicate with each other. And look, to be fair, you can't always be in the Situation Room. Like, I'll just give you an example. Marco Rubio is flying around the world. He's Secretary of State. That's his job. Pete Hegseth is visiting military bases to, improve military readiness. He was in Hawaii. That's his job. J.D. Vance, at the request of the president, is giving speeches all around the country to mobilize the base, explain the message, get the agenda out. So what I'm saying is many times people can't be in the Situation Room. They have to do their job, which means they're flying, they're around the world. So they've got to get a secure government communication network where people can talk to one another. And look, they just got burned by Biden. Everybody gets burned by Biden. Well, they just got burned again. So either rewire all of these devices and computers that they installed the Signal app on, or go to a completely different system. But until then, you got to be very careful, very careful. And look, I agree with Vince in many ways. Don't trust anybody. You can't trust anybody. And in a way, just think about it. You're Donald Trump. You've declared war on the deep state, which I agree with. Don't get me wrong. Well, the deep state's not going to take it lying down. They've been around for 60, 70 years. All that power, all that money, all that influence, all that control, it's a shadow government. It's a shadow empire. What government? As the JFK files have shown, my God, they've got stations in practically every country in the world. And they topple governments at will. They topple regimes at will. As you put it, they play 3D chess. They're very good at propaganda, at manipulation, public manipulation, media control, media manipulation, and to, and brainwash people and get people to believe, lies and fake narratives. So they're not going to go down without a fight. They're going to go, if they're going to go down, they're going to come after you with everything they have. So Trump and his team have to be aware of that. And I think that's frankly where I fault Mike Waltz. First of all, you don't do it on a Signal app. That's number one. I don't care what they tell you. Number two, you don't trust an advisor or an aide when you're talking about military, a military attack on Yemen. And you've got those kinds of important people. Just never mind. Okay, there was no classified information. There was no war plans. Fine. But here, Angelo, look, I've been privy as a journalist in an editorial room. People say all kinds of things in private you don't want people to know in public. What if they were, for example, bashing Macron? You know, they're going on about, oh, we're bailing out the Europeans again. And one person says, yeah, the French in particular. And then one guy calls Macron an a-hole. I'm not saying it happened, but I'm saying, what if they did that? That can create a massive diplomatic incident. You need secure communication. 734 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, liberalism's worst nightmare, baby. 617-266-6868. Okay, just before I was clipped, right at the end of the last segment, I was just basically saying, this is why you need a secure communications line. When you got, look, the most influential people in your cabinet, a group of them discussing a sensitive issue like bombing in Yemen. Because things are said, it's not that it's classified or privileged or, war plans. But as I said, look, I've been in meetings like this. People say things about the Ukrainian president, about the French president, which could cause I'm just giving an example, a real diplomatic controversy. So that's why you're saying, nah, this has got to be kept in private. Nobody should know about this. Because if Macron hears that we're bad-mouthing him behind his back, it's going to create a rift with the French. And we need the French to settle this thing in Ukraine or whatever the issue is. So that's why you can't have people talking on an unsecure line or chat group or app or whatever. Now, 617-266-6868. Very quickly, I want to go back to Goldberg, then I'm going to go to the phone lines. Part of this smear, and this is now clearly, it was a setup. I think there's no question it was a setup. And it was a setup to smear Waltz and to smear Hegseth. And the goal was to get them both to resign. They wanted to blow up Trump's national security team and thereby cripple and badly damage his presidency. There's no question now. Part of this attack was to claim violations of the Espionage Act, and in particular, of the 18 people on, Goldberg says, both in the piece that he wrote and then in subsequent interviews, that there was a covert CIA operative that was named in the thread. Now, according to Goldberg, I'm going to quote him directly, quote, I withheld her name. I didn't put it in the story because she's undercover. But I mean, the CIA director put it, meaning her name, her identity, into the chat. So what he's trying to claim is that Waltz outed this undercover CIA agent, thereby violating the Espionage Act, thereby putting this person's life in danger. Thereby, he's got to resign. Thereby, it's Watergate 2.0. There's only one problem. As Ratcliffe yesterday said, and then Waltz reaffirmed yesterday. And remember, Ratcliffe said this under oath. Goldberg is just flapping his mouth on MSNBC and CNN, on media-friendly outlets. And all of this was timed days ago. So he can lie through his teeth and nothing's going to happen to him. You lie under oath, especially if you're in a Trump administration official, you're finished. You're going to jail. Ratcliffe under oath said, she's not undercover. Who came up with this nonsense? With this fiction? She's well known. She's, a top CIA official, but we vetted her. We know her. Ratcliffe says she comes to almost every meeting that I participate in. She's introduced to everybody as a top CIA official, one of my top people I rely on within the CIA. There's no covert capacity. She's not working covert. She's publicly identified in meeting after meeting. She's known. Her name is known. Everybody knows who she is. So again, Goldberg is lying. Now, it begs the question, okay? It begs the question. Why didn't Goldberg, remember, he's acting. This is his shtick. This is his cover story. Okay, this CIA operative. This deep state hack. I can't believe it. I open my phone and oh my God, I'm involved in this group chat with all the most powerful people in the Trump administration. And I'm the only other person who's accidentally allowed to be included. Wow. I can't believe my luck. Why didn't he excuse himself from the chat? It's very obvious it's a cabinet level meeting. They're talking about sensitive information, sensitive topics. As I said earlier, Grace right away said to me, and I agree with her, if this was me, I'm like, not only would I leave, I would, text back, say, hey, I'm a journalist from XX. I don't know how I got involved in this, included in this. You got a breach. You need to be aware of this. Okay? Just so that you know. Bye. He didn't. He had no authorization to participate in this group chat. He had no business listening in on those conversations or taking screenshots. Why isn't the FBI knocking on his door? Why isn't there investigation of him? He has no right to be involved in this, to have access to this, to have hacked into it. Why isn't he being investigated? And then, furthermore, think about this. Out of the billions of people in the world, okay, what are we at now? 7 billion, 8 billion, whatever it is. Out of the billions and billions and billions of people in the world, the editor-in-chief of the notorious anti-Trump Atlantic somehow gets included in an encrypted text message with senior cabinet members? A guy who's been after Trump for years? Now, this so obviously smells setup. I mean, if you can't see it, as Mel in New York would say, it's so obvious even Ray Charles could see this. Hey, a blind man could see this. So it was obviously a setup. So the question is, who is involved in this conspiracy? Who was involved? There's no way out of all the people in the world. Okay. Marco Rubio, he's on. Let me see. Of course, my boss, Mike Waltz. Hegseth, Gabbard. Okay. And then all of a sudden, I go Jeffrey, and suddenly it's Jeffrey Goldberg. And he gets somehow included? Whoa. What a coincidence. I don't believe it. 617-266-6868. Dan in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
What's not being talked about here is how Obama, Brennan, William Burns, John Podesta, Leon Panetta put in systems, okay, to backdoor clearances, okay? That's what's not being talked about. And listen, you talked about Senate intelligence. The chairman of the Senate Intelligence, Tom Cotton, sits on the board of International Republican Institute, which reportedly received $130 million from USAID. The group actively works against President Trump's policies while funding UN refugee programs, okay? And listen, Lindsey Graham is part of this. There's also, I'll get the name for you, okay? But there's USAID money that went to a program that funds Marxist, socialist, communist Democrats. He's in on it. He got funded through that. He's the only Republican on it, okay? And then what you're right about Steve Jobs' wife in the Atlantic and this dirty rat Goldberg, okay? They're all, listen, Jeff, you got to listen to this. George Soros, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, the Pritzker family, Klaus Schwab, Warren Buffett, okay, Melinda Gates, Jeff Bezos, Disney, Steve Jobs' wife, they're all.
No, look, you're right. Dan, you're completely correct. The Atlantic is a front for the globalist New World Order. There's no question. And you've got many Republicans who are globalist uniparty Republicans. And that's the problem. we can't even trust many Republicans. 7:50 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, cleaning up. In this case, not the liberal bull, the deep state bull. Okay, Trump now refusing to throw Waltz under the bus. Listen to him saying, I stand by my national security advisor. In other words, I'm not going to do to him what was done to General Flynn in my first administration. Listen now to Trump saying Waltz is a good man. He made a mistake. We all make mistakes, but he's a very good man, and I have full confidence in my entire national security team. Roll cut to A, Mike.
He's a very good man. That man is a very good man right there that you criticize so strongly. He's a very good man, and he will continue to do a good job. In addition to him, we had very good people in that meeting, and those people have done a very, very effective job, and you're going to see it. And it goes on, by the way. It's going to go on. And I think the Houthis wish that it didn't happen, but that's what it's all about. We have to create a safe country, a safe world, and that's what we're doing.
I agree with him completely. I'm telling you. And not only that, I don't think Waltz should apologize. You know, it's our poll question, and I don't think he should, and I'll tell you why. He's taken responsibility, obviously, and he says if there's a fault here, the fault is mine. Doesn't matter if it was my staffer who ultimately did all this. It's my staffer. So it's my department, my supervision, my person. So ultimately, I'm the boss. The buck stops with me. But if you give an apology, this is how the media and the Democrats work. Then they're going to take that apology and say, you see, he apologized. And then from an apology, they're going to demand a resignation. And then from a resignation, they're going to say, we want not just Waltz, we're going to want Hegseth. And then we're going to want Rubio. And then we're going to want Tulsi Gabbard. And then, so they'll go from one to another to another. And they won't stop until they get the president himself. And that's why you have to block them right at the pass. And that's what Trump did yesterday, saying, I stand behind my man and I stand behind my whole team. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Nick in Weymouth. Thanks for holding, Nick, and welcome.
Hey, how you doing, Jeff? You know, I was laughing. He was a great caller, too, the guy that was talking about cotton. All I know is this. There has been no subpoena or whatever been issued to Goldberg, and you probably won't see one either. So that pretty much says it for cotton, as far as I'm concerned. Anyways, isn't it interesting that within hours there was a lawsuit, and I'm sure you're familiar with them, by American Oversight. Anybody out there, try and look them up anywhere to see what is behind it. It's another infamous nonprofit group, right, who will sue anybody 99% of the time on behalf of the Democrats, of course, right? So all of a sudden, that restraining order to a judge with requests by them was instantaneously available yesterday, within 13 hours of that thing. So what I'm saying is, this was no accident, right? And I'm not berating, obviously not Waltz. He was just compiling a list of contacts, encrypted in those, if you will, and that you were talking about the thread, right? Unseen, unrealized links to other sources, okay? That's how that guy came in. This didn't happen by accident. Pope Francis wasn't invited, okay? O.J. Simpson wasn't invited, but he was invited, okay? Atlantic, give me a break, okay? There are leaks. There was this meeting itself that was going to happen, that online meeting, that was probably leaked out long before the meeting, right? And as Ratcliffe indicated himself, that was an app that was installed on his phone or his laptop or both, whatever, before he even sat down and grabbed his first pencil, okay? So this is something that was orchestrated. Everything's ready to go, and like you've been saying, Jeff, and of course it's true. The midterms are coming up. They're trying to, and I thought Waltz made a great point too. Okay, lost in all of this was the success of the operation that they did. over there in Yemen, whatever the hell it was, with the Houthis, okay? They unclogged the canal there, whatever it is, of pirates, if you will, harassing shipping lanes, etc., including shots taken at U.S. destroyers, if you will. So no one even understands that. So, Jeff, for 40-plus something years, I was involved in IT and IS. I work with all kinds of people from all different, engineering, legal situations with attorneys, et cetera, et cetera. When it comes down to software, right, it's only as good as the people who requested it. Did they know what they wanted when they asked for it? Did they know what they were getting? And the people who designed it and implemented it. By the way, you play peanuts, you get monkeys, and that field like any other field. You got to do it right. But the thing is, foolproof software, that is something requested by fools and designed by fools. I will give you, okay, several years ago, I forget which one of the credit bureaus, one of the big credit bureaus, 400 million credit cards and Social Security numbers were divulged, okay, or hacked. So what I'm saying is that was a company in charge of looking at you and I, okay?
No, you're right. No. I mean, Nick, you're making excellent points, as usual. Look, nothing is foolproof, number one. And number two, look, I think you're right. There's a certain naivete, or at least there was, that just because it's put on your phone, just because it's put on your laptop, just because it was done under the Biden administration, that somehow it's safe and secure. Well, they just learned the hard way. And look, the question now is, were they deliberately set up? And I think they were. I think there's no question. And I find it funny the way you said it, but it's very effective. You know, Pope Francis wasn't on that call. It wasn't OJ. It wasn't me. It wasn't you. It wasn't members of this audience. You know, it wasn't some low-level reporter, I don't know, for, USA Today. I'm just going to make up, just give you a newspaper. In other words, it was Jeffrey Goldberg. So I'm sorry. There's no way in hell that this was an accident. No way. Absolutely no way. So the question is, who was behind it and who reached out to Goldberg? And then you've got your mole. And that's why I think the FBI needs to pay Goldberg a visit. Because he's clearly part of a conspiracy. There's no question. So, and he had no right listening in on that conversation. He had no right taking screenshots. He had no business. That was a essentially was in a cabinet meeting of the national security staff. So, what self-respecting person would listen in on that? Let's say you were accidentally looped in. I wouldn't. You wouldn't. In fact, either you would hang up and say, I don't want to get in trouble, right? Or you would say, hey, I'm sorry. This is Joe Blow. And, I don't know how I got looped in on this, but you guys got a problem. There's a security problem. Please be advised. I don't want your conversations, the whole world, to listen in on this. No, not this deep state SOB. No, this guy, he listens and he listens and then he lies and he lies and he lies. And it was all timed and coordinated to drop the day before the Senate intelligence hearing. So it's obvious. They're there. They want to derail Trump's agenda and they want to pick apart his cabinet. And they thought they had Waltz and Hegseth. They were convinced of it, that they had him in their crosshairs, dead to rights. And now, not so much. Nick, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Marilyn in Norwood. Thanks for holding, Marilyn, and welcome.
Sure, if anyone has mentioned this before to you, as I turned on the radio a little later today, but I'm of the impression that this journalist has probably been embedded in that software platform predating even President Trump's administration. Someone needs to investigate that. The other point I'd like to make is either Elon Musk, President Trump, Larry Ellison, or any of these software gurus that are listening, or there are people that might be listening, there needs to be a way that any external emails are colorized or highlighted, physically highlighted, not just bolded, but in a different color. So then when there are conference calls involving many people or, a few people, everyone who's a participant in that call can see if there is an outsider. Sometimes there are outside corporations that need to interact with regulatory authorities. So, those are legitimate kinds of exchanges. But I would say there needs to be a congressional investigation as to who's on that list and to actually investigate how many years this software platform has been in use. Because I would venture a guess, this gentleman has been listening in for years on very private conversations involving national security. And I'll hang up now. Thank you.
Marilyn, thank you very much for that call. No, we talked about it earlier. It's now come out. Not only was the Biden regime and their top national security people using Signal exactly the way it was done by Waltz and everyone else on this chat group, but that reporters regularly were listening in under Biden. So when you said, were they pre-programmed to be on this, on the chat? I think they were. And what they did was they gave them privileged access to minute details of how the administration worked under Biden, where they could all write their ridiculous best-selling books, inside Washington and, this Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan, the inside story, in exchange for carrying water. Because that's what the press did for Biden. Now, and you want to see here, this is Goldberg. This is The Atlantic. If you call this a magazine, listen to this. Remember when Joe Biden, it was a big scandal when he was vice president, literally would be swimming, I'm not kidding, completely butt naked in front of female Secret Service agents. Do you remember that? He'd be, expose himself and then swimming in the pool as vice president, and they had to watch him naked. Remember that? Okay. This is The Atlantic under Jeffrey Goldberg. Here, I'm just going to give you the headlines. In defense of naked Joe Biden. Then there's another piece. Joe Biden, the most influential vice president in history, ? Here's another one. Remember the whole scandal regarding Burisma and Hunter? There's The Atlantic. It's totally normal. This is the headline. It's totally normal that Joe Biden's son works for a Ukrainian energy company. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any criticisms of Biden during his administration? WTF ? Leave Biden alone. Another piece. Listen to this. Joe Biden's dating advice for girls. Another one. Biden gets China. Another one. Biden tells third graders Obama is quote unquote really cool. Another one. I could go on and on. Joe Biden, crazy like a fox. I mean, honestly, this is the kind of sycophantic propaganda that would even make Bolsheviks and the media under Stalin blush. He's the greatest. No, he's more than the greatest. He can walk around nude. What the hell's wrong with that? So that's how deeply connected Jeffrey Goldberg is with the entire Biden regime. And he just happened to show up on that group chat text? Right. If you believe that, I've got swampland in Florida you may be interested in. Bill in Sudbury. Thanks for holding, Bill, and welcome.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, Jeff. But why don't you hold your guys to any standard at all? Why aren't you asking everybody else on the call? Why did nobody speak up? Why did nobody say, hey, this is getting kind of sensitive here. Let's go to that secure communication line. These are the most senior officials in the government, and none of them speak up.
Well, I don't understand. Anthony Blinken and Lloyd Austin and Susan Rice and Kamala Harris were always talking on Signal regarding national security affairs, with reporters literally listening in, invited in. So you guys didn't care under Biden. How come you suddenly care now under Trump? That's number one. Number two, as I tried to explain, but then again, I don't know if you listen or not, or if you want to listen. Who put Signal into everyone's computers and told them it was 1,000% safe? The Biden regime. Who put Signal into everyone's phones and laptops and told them it was 100% safe and secure? In fact, at the CIA, Ratcliffe was told specifically by Biden's people, this is the most secure communication line on the planet. We all use Signal. So use Signal. So I don't understand. If this, and by the way, Mark Warner, just so that you understand what a bunch of hypocrites the Dems are on this issue, Mark Warner, who is as you know, he was the ranking member yesterday on the Senate Intelligence Committee, when he tried to go after Trump in 2018 and tried to go on about the Russia hoax, he used Signal to communicate with the lobbyist of one of the top Russian billionaire oligarchs, Oleg Deripaska, who, by the way, is a crony of Putin, in order to get access to Christopher Steele, with the author of that famous dossier, and literally is telling these people, I don't want to leave a paper trail. I don't want to leave a paper trail. We've got to keep it all on Signal. Even though, of course, it got breached and it got hacked. So Warner is the biggest hypocrite on the planet. He used Signal. He used Signal for sensitive investigations. Signal was compromised, and he's now going to try to get these people to resign? Seriously, Bill, what planet are you living on?
You didn't come near to answering my question.
I just did.
Why do you give them an automatic pass?
Because they did nothing wrong. No war plans were discussed. No classified information was mentioned. Forgive me. So what's the problem? So to answer it to you this way, Biden's national security people discuss sensitive topics with reporters on Signal. So if it's good enough for Biden, why isn't it good enough for Trump? If it's good enough for Blinken, why isn't it good enough for Rubio? If it's good enough for Lloyd Austin, why is it not good enough for Pete Hegseth? If it was good enough for Jake Sullivan, Biden's national security advisor, why wasn't it good enough for Mike Waltz? Can you explain that to me?
In the past, they're all responsible, but your guys now, they're not.
No.
Somebody else.
No. Nobody said this was a scandal until you guys said it was a scandal. This is akin to, they're all drinking from the water fountain. And then Trump's people drink from the water fountain. And then you come in and say, how could you guys be drinking from the water fountain? You guys installed the water fountain. You're drinking from the water fountain. You're telling us on the way out, the transition, that's the water fountain. If you want water, you got to drink from there. And then you call up and say, they shouldn't have been drinking from the water fountain. Do you understand how insane you sound? Like, even by your TDS standards, do you understand? No. I'll tell you, again, you're missing the story. And you know you're deliberately missing the story because you know that's where the story is. Why was Jeffrey Goldberg, okay, who made a mission of his life in that lousy garbage magazine of his, who is determined to destroy Trump, why was he added to that group chat? Who put him up to it, Bill? Who's trying to set up Trump? Why him of every other person on the planet? It happened to be him. You think it was an accident, Bill? I'm just curious. Hello?
all the guys who actually work for the country. What you're saying is the one guy there who isn't working for Trump, it's all his fault. We're going to blame him.
Oh, my God. So hold on. Hold on. You're saying Goldberg had every right to listen in on that conversation?
No, you're saying Hegseth has no responsibility for who's on the line. It's all just happening in front of him. He's completely blameless.
All right. Listen, Bill. Why was it okay for Biden and his people to use Signal? Go.
Hey, for Hegseth, you were just saying that.
No. Why was it okay for Biden and his national security people to use Signal? Go.
Why do you demand to change the subject right now?
No. You're saying the use of Signal is wrong. You're saying the use of Signal is wrong and threatens national security. Why didn't it threaten national security under Biden? Explain that to me.
Oh, you don't listen good. What I said is, why did no one speak up on the call?
Because it was considered acceptable, and it was considered acceptable by your people. Now, no human being can be as possibly stupid as you. Like, seriously. So, either you have an IQ of 10, or you're just literally a professional liar. So, if it's good enough for Biden, it's good enough for Trump. If it's good enough for his national security team, it's good enough for Trump's national security team. There's no scandal. Plus, no classified information was discussed. Plus, no war plans. So why should people apologize every time Bill comes on? And I was just telling Mike, I go, I don't know what it is about him. I think he's a masochist. I really do. I think he loves to have his, intellectually have his face kicked in every single time. It's just incredible. Anyway, 617-266-6868 is the number. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, here on the great WRKO. All right, this is, I think, the text of the show so far. You can text the Kuhner Man, 70470. This is from 917. Jeff, let's now take this Signal scandal a step further. It's on all of our federal government's approved list to communicate. All of the computers, all of the government phones, all of the government laptops. Which means that Biden's shadow government is spying on the CIA and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's operations in real time via Signal. Pete Hegseth has to order Signal removed from all Pentagon employees, military and civilian. Biden's administration was controlled by Iran and China, like our Congress is. Blinken has planted spies for China and Iran in every department of our government, including the Pentagon via Signal. They are spying on on Trump's administration. Okay, look, I don't know about China and Iran. I don't know. I wouldn't doubt it, but I know the Chinese have infiltrated our government. There's no question. And so have the Iranians. There's no question. And this really accelerated under Biden. But they're definitely spying. The shadow government is clearly spying on Trump. They're trying to sabotage Trump. And I agree completely. You've got to remove Signal. I would go even further than the Pentagon. From the CIA, from the NSA, frankly, from the entire government. Just scrap it. Get rid of it. Remove it. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Maria in Ludlow. Thanks for holding, Maria, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. How are you? How's your blood pressure, Jeff?
Well, it's like arguing with a wall. You know what I mean? It's just...
I swear I need to go there and check your blood pressure. Bill is just out of control. Thank Jesus. But I have a few points, and I want to see if you agree with my points. So, one, they need to call a plumber and shut off that goddamn water fountain. They need to shut it off and restart a new one. Because everything that Biden did, I would not trust it with a 10-foot pole. They need to shut it off, that signal, and start a whole brand new one, because all of his old people are all there and listening in, so that needs to be priority gone. 2, I don't understand, like, if you look in a dictionary on the hypocrites, Democrats, their name is there, Democrats, first thing that will pop up. They're the biggest hypocrites and haters in the United States. So, I firmly believe this is such a farce, okay? Anything the Democrats do, they will sweep under the rug. They will do, they don't care. They don't care, because the Republicans are not going to question it and are not going to prolong it. See what happens right now. So now the Democrats are pushing this until they can't push it any further, and I'm sure they will figure out a way to push it even further of what this happened. This was done intentionally. Goldberg got this information, and it was all like set up. It was a big setup. So FBI should be investigating him until he's blue in the face. We should not let these people get away with it. They don't let us get away with anything. So, and they're pushing this to put our attention away from the important things. So they had a meeting a couple of days ago, if I'm not wrong, discussing this. Why are we doing this? Why are we stooping down to their level, spending days, wasting days? We have 4 years in this, and we're spending days with their idiocy. I mean, I'm not understanding. There's things, real things that needs to be taken care of. They're taking our attention from us doing what we're supposed to be doing, is fixing this country and helping the American people. Instead, our attention is on this stupidity. That's what they want. They want our attention deviated from the real issues, and we have to nurse this to make them happy. Absolutely not. We need people like you and I in there, Jeff, because we wouldn't be taking this bull crap. We were like, our backbones would be like, I don't think so. We're not babying this. We're not absolutely babying this. Absolutely not. They're disgusting, and they will continue to go, and the Republicans are a bunch of buffoons that will continue to oblige by it. Why? Why are we doing this? Let it go. It's like that idiot in Texas, that lady. I don't even know her name because she's not relevant. She called Governor Abbott Hot Wheels.
Yeah, Governor Hot Wheels. That was Jasmine Crockett. Yeah, she called Governor Abbott, who's he's a paraplegic. He's paralyzed from the waist down, so he has to be in a wheelchair. And she was mocking him, calling him Governor Hot Wheels. And apparently, she also assaulted a journalist. She's in trouble. She, hit the guy's phone or pushed his phone away and hit him in the face. She's out of control. And that's what you're starting to see now. This is desperation on their part. It's now they're lashing out. They're openly now endorsing terrorism. Teslas are being vandalized now all across the country. There was a Mardi Gras parade in New Orleans where you see it. It's caught on video. These left-wing thugs, these terrorists, are assaulting these Teslas and, smashing windows and destroying these cars, spray painting swastikas on them. And many of these owners are actually Democrats. And what's happening is they're so out of control now that these Democrats are saying, if this is my party, if this is what they're going to do to us, maybe we should start backing Trump. So this is how insane that they have gotten. And look, you're right. This is all much ado about nothing. They literally tried to manufacture a scandal out of nothing. Okay, a little bit of breaking news. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz now has said that he has spoken personally with Elon Musk and that Elon and his team, his tech experts, are going to figure out, they're on the case to explain how Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic got into the Signal chat. And then Waltz again reiterated, saying, I'm telling you, 100% guarantee. I've never called him. I've never spoken to Goldberg. I've never texted him. He's not on my phone, never was on my phone. He says, I've just handed all my phones over to Elon, my laptop, my computer. I said, guys, go at it. You're not going to find Goldberg. So Elon is on top of the whole thing. Frankly, I'd have Elon seriously, just get rid of Signal completely. Not just find the leaker, which is great, don't get me wrong, but just, no. Pentagon, CIA, NSA, every Signal from every government device, every computer, get rid of it. Just get rid of it. 617-266-6868. Frankly, that would be my recommendation. Now, very, very quick, because I thought Maria made an excellent point about the hypocrisy from the media and from the Democrats. It's so thick, you can choke on it. Well, we pretty much choked in that conversation, that the back and forth, the debate I had with Bill in Sudbury, where he just the hypocrisy he couldn't acknowledge because that would shatter his entire worldview. So listen now. This is Mark Warner, senator from Virginia, Democrat. He is the ranking member on the Senate Intelligence Committee. You want to talk about a massive, giant hypocrite. Listen now to Warner. He was, just excoriating Ratcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard. How dare this conversation take place over Signal? How dare you do this? Sensitive information, classified information on an unclassified system. You're threatening national security. Roll cut 20, Mike.
So no, the Signal fiasco is not a one-off. It is unfortunately a pattern we're seeing too often repeated. I fear that we feel the erosion of trust from our workplace, from our companies, and from our allies and partners can't be put back in the bottle overnight. Make no mistake, these actions make America less safe.
Well, except there's one problem. Actually, there's two problems. One, the military operation in Yemen was practically flawless. It was the Houthi leadership was utterly smashed and destroyed. Their command and control centers were taken out. Top Houthi leaders, as I said, were killed. Many of their drones and missiles were taken out. It was surgical precision. One of the most devastating campaigns and effective campaigns in recent memory. And just by the way, compare that to the military disaster that was Afghanistan under Biden. And none of these Democrats cared about national security. None. 13 dead service members. Who cares? Are billions of dollars of our best sensitive military technology and equipment handed over to the Taliban and to China and to Russia. Who cares? The surrender of Bagram Air Base. Who cares? One of the greatest catastrophic withdrawals in American history. Who cares? But a highly successful military campaign that takes out the very group that has been harassing our shipping, European shipping, global shipping, and one of the key supply routes in the entire world that Biden did nothing about for years under his presidency. In fact, let the Houthis get stronger and stronger and stronger. And all of a sudden, our allies, the world, we're all less safe. Right. But there's a bigger problem. Listen now to this. Hat tip to Breitbart for breaking the story. Everybody's now following Breitbart on this. In 2018, the very same Senator Mark Warner, who, by the way, he put on one hell of a show yesterday, banging the table, the drama, the yelling, the shouting. Well, he was caught red-handed. He, as I said in my debate with Bill, he used Signal. And he used Signal to communicate in secret with a lobbyist for one of the wealthiest Russian oligarchs, a multi-billionaire, and by the way, very close pal of Vladimir Putin. His name is Oleg Deripaska. And it came out during an investigation that Warner literally told Deripaska's lobbyist, I don't want to leave a quote-unquote paper trail, as he was desperately trying to connect with Christopher Steele, the infamous Russia hoaxer, the guy who wrote the infamous Steele dossier, which was a complete pack of lies. So let me get this straight. It's okay for you to use Signal on a very sensitive investigation about whether Trump was a secret Russian agent, as you were reaching out to people within Putin's inner circle in order to get in contact with a former British spy? So Signal was okay then for you. And by the way, that eventually got hacked. Okay, but let that go. So it's okay for you. It's okay for the Democrats. It's okay for top Biden officials to use Signal. But suddenly now it's a crisis and we need resignations and it's a threat to national security if Trump's people use it. You phony, you fraud, you. The biggest hypocrite in the Senate is that clown Mark Warner. Bill in Hawaii. Thanks for holding, Bill, and welcome.
Aloha.
Aloha, Bill. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing much better. Hey, I wanted to point out that this is like the deep state playbook. They used it in many times in other different resources or whatever you want to call it. The one that I'm going to point out is the Epstein list. They got people, thousands of people on the Epstein list, all because they want to blackmail every single one of them. So Trump goes on one time to the island, and now everybody's going to point out, oh, hey, Trump must be investigated because he's on that list.
Well, you're right. No, look, Bill, and to me, what's even more, you're right. You're completely right. But what's more concerning is they spied on Trump the first time. They spied on his campaign. Okay, Crossfire Hurricane, which, by the way, Trump yesterday signed an executive order to release all the files, everything on Crossfire Hurricane. But they spied on his campaign illegally. They spied on his presidency, first term, illegally. And now it appears we caught him red-handed again, spying on Trump again. So it begs the question, what is the deep state doing spying on the sitting elected president of the United States? They're supposed to be working for him, for us. All right, brilliant text from 508. You can text the Kuhner Man, 70470, 70470. Jeff, let me get this straight. Pete Hegseth accidentally shares sensitive information with a journalist, and the left calls for him to resign, while General Milley intentionally shares classified information with the Chinese Communist Party, and the left calls him a hero. Yeah. There you go. You pretty much nailed it. That's the Bills in Sudbury for you. That's the Moonbats. Dan in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Dan. Go ahead, my friend.
Oh, I'm in North Andover. Sorry, Jeff. A little confused. Hey, so a couple of quick things. Number one, while Bill from Sudbury was on the phone, I'm taking care of my buddy's dog. I had him out for a walk. Guess what the dog did while Bill was on the phone? Guess what I had to bag up, and it was exactly like what we get from Bill. All right, anyways. Jeff.
Yes, Dan, go ahead.
First of all, and I love your callers, and honestly, I'm busy a lot these days, so I listen to a lot of the podcasts, follow afterwards, right? But I love a lot of your callers, but Signal is probably the most secure messaging app in the world, right? it is used by many, many governments because it's secure. People today communicate in text messaging. That's how they communicate. Everybody, especially so. Trump has a lot of younger guys on his in his cabinet. Those guys all communicate with text messaging. So I know Mike Waltz. Mike, so you know I split time between here and Jacksonville. Mike was elected into DeSantis's old rep seat, and I actually helped on the campaign. So he's a great guy, extremely smart guy, but he is a Army Special Forces. He's a smart guy. What are the chances that this was actually done on purpose? It was leaked. What was leaked? A perfect communication among all of the cabinet members that were on that call and that text chain. Perfect communication. A thoughtful plan of how we should proceed. Right? So maybe it was done on purpose. And until this morning with you, Jeff, who's been talking about Elon Musk since Sunday? Nobody. Took him off the front page.
Interesting.
Anything?
Oh, interesting. Dan, do you think if this was done intentionally by the national security team, was part of the goal or the mission to find out, are reporters listening in? Do we have a mole? Is there someone that's going to try or is leaking information to the destroy Trump media, and we need to flush that person out? Do you think that was maybe part, if this was a deliberate leak, do you think that was part of the goal?
I don't personally use Signal, but I use some other encrypted apps. Nobody gets into these chat groups by accident. Someone had to add them. Okay, so it's not, it's almost impossible to hack. Someone added them, definitely. Do I think Wong or one of his staff under Waltz might have done it? Sure, absolutely. Did they do it on purpose? Yeah, absolutely. What they take the one reporter that is known for giving hoaxes, right? They didn't give it to Martha Radich. They didn't give it to you, Jeff. You would have told the truth, right? They gave it to him. Why? Because he's a liar.
Interesting. Dan, always, I'm telling you, I love your calls. I really do. Dan, thank you very much for that call. So let me throw that log on the fire. A great call from Dan. Dan says, you know what? We're kind of looking at it from the wrong lens. Waltz is a very smart guy, former special operations, sharp as a tack. Maybe this was more of a deliberate leak. In other words, let's see who the mole is. Let's flush out the mole. Do you believe that it was deliberate? And what do you think should happen to these people within the Trump administration who are leaking? 617-266-6868. And let's go straight to Jeffrey Goldberg. Should the FBI be investigating him? Jerry on the Cape. Thanks for holding, Jerry, and welcome. Comrade, how are you, my friend?
Здравствует. Jeff, 3 points I want to make here. You've had some great calls this morning. Number one, the president, since 2016, when Admiral Rogers went to Trump Tower to warn him about Hussein spying on him since 2012, the president knows to be in a secured location, in-person communication only. He admitted, you heard him say that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Number two, what is the deep state trying to distract from here? I'm going to tell you. It's the Russia-Ukraine peace settlement. That's what they're trying to, because President Trump is going to broker this deal completely. He's going to get the Nobel Peace Prize. They're losing their collective minds. Because that's what's going to happen, Jeff. Even more, someone inflected, put Tony Blinken's name. You read a text about Tony Blinken? He's under investigation right now for subverting the Romanian government, you know. Because that's what the deep state's new playground is going to be. For money laundering, arms dealing, drug trafficking, human trafficking, sexual exploitation, all of that stuff. That's where they're going to try to set it up, is in Romania now, Jeff. And lastly, did you notice why they're not mentioning the staffer's name on the walls?
Well, they're throwing out the name Alex Wong, one of his top people, is being thrown about. But you're right. They haven't specifically identified the staffer. Now, why is that, Jerry? I'm just curious.
No. All I know about Wong is he came here from Guangdong, China. There's not much known about the guy. He's an attorney. He went to UPenn and Harvard, so the president loves him because he went to UPenn, obviously. He worked for the State Department, and he was very tight with Mike Pompeo, Mitt Romney, and Tom Cotton. So that kind of concerns me a little bit.
Interesting. The Pompeo-Romney connection in particular worries me. And Cotton, as you know, is a mouthpiece for the military-industrial complex.
Absolutely.
He's a big hawk, big neocon. Jerry, do you think we have a problem within the CIA, within the NSA? Do we have people now that are out to destroy this president and do what they did in the first term? Leak.
Between Tulsi Gabbard, John Ratcliffe, Kash Patel, and the people that he has within that realm, they're going to root out a lot of this stuff, Jeff.
I hope so. From your lips to God's ears. Jerry, as always, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Scott in Revere. Thanks for holding, Scott, and welcome.
I love you, and I'll take you away, my friend.
Scott, I love the way you say it with so much passion. My friend, what do you make of all of this?
Jeff, you know what's great? And I'm telling you, according to country, we are just smarter than other people, and there is no doubt about it. Yesterday we had this thing. Yesterday, all the callers, yesterday and today, it could be 1,000 reasons. I believe they knew all about it. I believe they flushed it. They just flushed this whole thing down to see who comes up, and they got what they wanted. Because you notice that none of them, Hegseth was not flustered at all. He was mad because he knew something was going on. It's common sense. When you get off a plane and the first thing you hear is how they found out about your conversation, you know what I mean? It's all common sense. It was out like you said, Jeff. Trump is being infiltrated from within. We know this. Now it's a matter of flushing certain information down to people like Bill and Sudbury with their Trump derangement syndrome. And think of this, Jeff. Imagine if they just didn't say anything and they just kept on recording everything that they've been saying. Imagine if they didn't have Trump derangement syndrome. They couldn't wait to get this out there. That was their mistake. Now it's out in the open. Now it's never going to happen again.
Scott, that's a magnificent point. That's a magnificent point. You know what? If they were smarter, you're right. They should have waited and recorded more and taped more and listened more. Instead, you're right. They're so eager to go after him. They're so, as you put it, consumed with their TDS, their Trump derangement syndrome. They can't control themselves. And they say, "Oh, we got him. We've got Hegseth. We've got Waltz. We're going to bring the whole damn national security team down." And instead, I don't even think it's a big nothing burger. I think it's blowing up in their face. This is now turning against them. Frankly, they look like idiots now. And again, Trump looks like the victim. And I think it's becoming clearer by the second. He's being set up. Again, he's being set up. Scott, dynamite call. 617-266-6868. Okay, a couple lines are open if you want to jump on. Now is the time to do it. Joining me now, as she always does at this time, Dr. Grace, putting liberals in their place. Grace Voto, my wonderful wife. Grace, you've been following this like I have. What do you make of the whole so-called scandal? And Is it now a fabricated media scandal? And did the media and the Democrats jump the gun? What say you?
Well, Jeff, I want to get a lot of questions answered. So one of the most important is, how long has this app been used? Now, we know that it was used before the Trump team ever started to use it, as we heard in testimony, in congressional testimony this week. They were basically told there's nothing wrong with this app. The Biden administration used it. One of my first questions is, whoever authorized this? Whoever authorized this as a means of conducting foreign policy? I mean, I think it's really astonishing when you think about this. If we just look at what we know for sure, that Trump's foreign policy team was using an app to make a decision about sending our boys into a military operation. They were doing the final should we go ahead or not, on a Saturday morning, instead of convening. You know, this is just very disturbing to me. This is not how it should be done, and I'm not saying it's the fault of the team. Obviously, they were told that it was okay to proceed this way. And who on earth changed the protocol to lead this team to believe that you can send our boys into a military operation and not convene in person? I mean, I'm outraged at that. I'm not blaming Trump's team, but I'm saying we got to get to the bottom of how did this happen? And, you know, we were all concerned about the Chinese spy balloon that obviously took a lot of our information as it crossed across the country. We talked about that extensively during the Biden administration. But were there other security breaches? How many other times was the principals meetings held during the Biden administration and unauthorized people were on the apps? I mean, this is the one we know of. So first, I've got all that set of questions that have to be addressed. And then the other set of questions has to do with Mike Waltz. I'm really not sure that we have clearly understood what his version of the story is. He was interviewed last night by Laura Ingraham, so a friendly reporter now. And I don't think he gave us a clear story. He said that someone on his staff was responsible, but then he said he takes full responsibility. Well, he was pressed. Well, how did this happen? Well, you know, sometimes there's a number in your phone and you attribute it to the wrong person. So there's a number and then you put somebody else's name on it. Sure, that's happened. That's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to other people. But she asked him, but when you convened the chat on Saturday, who did you think that person was with those initials? And he didn't have an answer. And he didn't want to name the staffer. And when he was pressed about the staff's action, well, I'm responsible nonetheless. So in my view, Waltz is all over the place. If I'm Trump, I want him in my office. I want a thorough accounting of absolutely everything. Then he's telling us that Musk is going to look into this. We don't need Musk to look into this. We just need you to answer some questions straight. So I'm not sure about, Waltz's version of events at all. Now, Goldberg, we know he's a liar. So he says that on March 11, he received some kind of an invitation to join this group. And then a few days later, he was stunned that this conversation was taking place. Well, who got him into that group on March 11? And then who did they think was in the principals meeting on that day? Didn't they all look and whenever I'm on a group chat, I quickly ascertain who's on the chat with me? Who did they all think was that other person? I mean, we need answers to these questions. Also, more questions, Jeff. They're saying there's no classified material, but one question I want to ask is that was exchanged on that day. Well, was anything declassified after the story broke? Because that's going to tell us a lot. Right now, the Trump's team is all on the same page. No classified information. There wasn't information about targets or the exact details of military operations. Okay, so was anything declassified after? You need to answer that question for me. Now, Goldberg claims that a CIA operative was revealed. The name was revealed during the text exchanges. That is extremely serious. Is that true or not true? I mean, we need a straight answer.
No, I can tell you right now that's a lie. Goldberg's now been caught in multiple lies. Now he's admitted that there were no war plans. Literally, the Atlantic had to issue a statement. So, there were no war plans. So we caught him on a lie. Then on this undercover CIA operative, Ratcliffe yesterday testified under oath, saying everybody knows this CIA person. This is one of my top aides. It's a female. I bring her with me at every meeting. She's identified fully in every meeting. She's never been covert. She's not covert. Literally, Goldberg made the whole thing up. And conveniently now, he's dropped that now. He's just released more of those messages. Okay, he's released more. By the way, I tried to access those messages. You have to subscribe to The Atlantic to get access to those extra messages now that he's releasing. So they're literally trying to make money off of this. So on the one hand, he's saying, oh, I'm a patriot. This is all about getting the truth. And suddenly, though, at $39.99, basically $40, and you can have access to this. I mean, he's a fraud. He's a charlatan. He's known in D.C. He's a deep state hack. He's a mouthpiece for the CIA. So I don't believe anything that comes out of his mouth. But no, I want to get back to your earlier point because I think you made some excellent points. And what I want to add is this, and I want to get your take. How did Goldberg, to me, that's the question. If there were no war plans and there was no classified information, so basically this is all, they lied. It's a big nothing burger. But how did Goldberg end up, of all, there's, 7-8 billion people in the world. Of all the people in the world, how does he end up, quote unquote, accidentally, as he put it, being included in that group chat text? Him, Trump's number one enemy in print media. Him, whose magazine is funded by the wife of the late Steve Jobs, who's a diehard Democrat, diehard globalist, diehard anti-Trumper. So here's a guy who pushed the suckers and losers hoax, who pushed the Russia collusion hoax, who covered up for every crime Joe Biden committed, and suddenly he happens to be him. He's included on that chat, and it's all supposed to be coincidence. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And so it goes back to your point. He's on that chat and nobody notices. How can they not notice? And how could the person who organized it not notice? What say you?
Well, that's what I said, Jeff. I have a lot of questions. And you say, okay, the guy's a liar. We know he's a liar. We agree. All right. But why doesn't then the administration release everything then? Just release the whole thing. So we get to the bottom of exactly what was in that exchange. We get to see it. We get to analyze it. And if they don't want to release it to the public for maybe very good reasons, just release it to some key senators so they can ascertain what was in there and what was not in there. I just have a ton of questions. Obviously, the guy's a charlatan, and obviously they're blowing it up and they're trying to sabotage the Trump administration. No question about that. But in order to protect Donald Trump going forward, this is why we got to get the answers to all the questions, because we have to know who in his administration can be trusted, who cannot be trusted, who is competent, who is not competent. He's going to have to make these decisions. So I have a lot of questions in order to protect him, because his actions so far have been stellar, including the actions in taking on the Houthis. Absolutely brilliant and amazing. But I have a lot of questions about what went down and how long this procedure is going on and what exactly was revealed and what exactly was not revealed.
Grace, we've literally got 1 minute. Do you believe Hegseth and Waltz let the president down?
I think Waltz is not told us everything. And so I'm very wary of him. And I think Donald Trump has to look very carefully at Waltz. And Hegseth, Jeff, we've had this debate on the air. I did not think he was qualified for the job. I was strongly urging Donald Trump and his team not to go forward with him. And I think that Hegseth is a bit of a loose cannon. Even if you look at how he's handled the situation when he came off that plane a few days ago, his answer should have simply been, there has been a breach. We're looking into it. It's very serious. We're looking into it, and we will get back to everybody when we have all the details. But we're taking this very seriously. That's the answer. That's the answer. Sometimes the best answer is the simple answer. I thought Tulsi Gabbard did a great job when she said she was being pressed. Look, the matter is under review. That's the answer of a responsible person who cares about our national security. This is a very serious breach. I don't want to just hear...
Mike, you couldn't let her finish her last two words, Mike? Okay, you know how much I love Shen Yun, and I'm urging all of you to go see it. If you haven't seen it, trust me, it's an experience. Well, I want to do something for the wonderful callers of this show, because you make this show so much better. So, management has agreed, and we're going to be doing this for the rest of the week. We're going to be giving away 2 free tickets to Shen Yun. So, right now, be the first caller at 781-350-7045. 781-350-7045. And you will get 2 free tickets to Shen Yun. Treat yourself and your loved ones to an unforgettable night at Shen Yun, a true celebration of beauty and heritage. It's coming to Boston, Worcester, Portland, and Providence starting March 29th. Get your tickets now, shenyun.com. That's SHENYUN.com. Okay, lot of reaction to Grace's interview. She always generates a lot of interest, frankly. 617-266-6868 is the number. So let me ask all of you, was it a setup? Was it a setup? Was Trump being set up? Here is 781. Jeff, it wasn't random. There was no other reason for Jeffrey Goldberg to be on that Signal chat group, a group chat, forgive me. It was a coordinated operation done to try to derail MAGA and President Trump's agenda. I agree. I completely agree. By the way, now many of you are also saying that Goldberg now from The Atlantic, I thought he was just releasing some more messages. Apparently now he has published the complete Signal chat transcript. The whole thing. So we don't need the administration to do it or to share it with senators because now Goldberg has released everything. Literally everything. So there you go. Okay, now one more and then this is from 781. Jeff, Goldberg was invited to join the Signal chat. Didn't he realize that he was then being invited into a conversation involving top national security officials? So why did he accept the call? And once he was invited and he accepted the call and knew that it was real, what kind of a person listens in to a top secret national security meeting? Only a spy or a mole. Interesting. Nick in Somerville. Thanks for holding, Nick, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for taking my call. First time calling. Listen to you forever.
Welcome, Nick. Welcome.
Thank you. I met you a few years ago back at the old Kowloon. You had the Utah firearms class. We talked a little bit. We joked. We took a picture. And I fell in love with you. In a non-sexual way, of course.
Thank you, Nick.
Now,
thank you.
Yeah.
Nick, please
now,
go ahead, my friend.
Thunder.
Go ahead.
Now, Dan stole my thunder. Signal is the most secure app, okay? It's even more secure than WhatsApp. And that's why the military shipped it over. All the current guys that are serving overseas are using it to talk to their family. It's authorized. So where I'm going with this, Jeff, is that the only way this guy got in there was someone put his number in there. Now, this guy Waltz is a heavy-duty, decorated guy. He's got a bunch of bronze stars and everything. So he delegated this task to his underlink there, Wong. He said, okay, here's the numbers. Put them in. Match the numbers with the names. And make sure you got 18 numbers, 18 names. Give me the phone back when it's ready. Now, I have a little bit of a military past, but I won't get into it. You all go by what Ronald Reagan said. Trust but verify. Now, if a sergeant handed me that phone back and said, "Sir, you're ready to go," I said, "Oh, yeah? You sure you didn't put the Chipotle's phone number in there by mistake?" Mm-hmm. "Oh, sir, we're all set." "Okay, give me the phone. We're going to sit down and go over all those numbers and match the numbers with the names. Because if we make a mistake, I'm done and you're done." So this guy Wong, whoever had his phone, he's the culprit. You will find out somehow that he is related or has some type of affiliation to this guy Goldberg. Enough said.
Nick, I think you've laid it out beautifully. Really. And again, first time calling, I wish you call again because this is a superb call. Look, you're right. You've got to be disciplined. You've got to be thorough. You've got to be conscientious. And this is where I do blame Waltz. And, well, he's taken responsibility. So that was sloppy. He was in charge of setting up the group chat. I know Pete Hegseth was the point man because he's Secretary of Defense in terms of facilitating the discussion, the debate, the talk. I get that. But it was Waltz who was tasked with put the team together and let them hash out what's the best way to do this. And you got to dot your I's and cross your T's. As you would, as you said. You go, "Jeff, I would make sure 18 numbers match 18 names and that those names are exactly the names we want on that list." You have to do it. You can't just delegate to a subordinate and say, yeah, I trust him. You're right. Trust, but verify. Check. And he didn't do that. And look, in a way, it's a blessing because we now know he's being spied on. Waltz is being spied on, Hegseth's being spied on, and Trump is being spied on. So in a way, that the silver lining here is that we kind of flushed him out. But you're right. That's wrong. You can't do that. And someone who was a ex-special, operations guy, Waltz, he should have done that. And anyway, look, Nick, we've got to now find out if Wong really is a mole. Or if it's not him, who is the mole? But there's clearly now a conspirator, a saboteur, whatever you want to call it, within high up in Trump's inner circle. There's no question now. So that person has to be found, and they have to weed that person out ASAP. Nick, please call again. 617-266-6868 is the number. By the way, Mike was just telling me, and I'm not going to reveal the relationship, just that Mike said he knows someone very well, let's just put it this way, who's in the Navy SEALs. Again, elite special forces. And he said, that person told Mike, no, we communicate through Signal. So just to let you know how widespread Signal is, it's widely used in the military. It's widely used even among special forces. I'm not justifying what was done. And that's to keep in contact with his family. So my point is, it's become very widespread. So when the Democrats are acting like, how could you be on Signal? Okay, there's more news coming in. It just keeps coming in over this story. Anyway, just very quick. This is from Eric on Messenger, and I think he makes a really, really, really good point. Jeff, when you're invited to a group chat, say like on Signal, don't you have to hit accept? It's got like 3 question marks beside it. If so, then why did Goldberg view info that he wasn't supposed to accept and knew he shouldn't accept? Because I think it's obvious. I think it was a setup. And I think it's getting more and more obvious by the second, by the hour, by the day. In fact, let me read to you another brilliant text. Absolutely phenomenal text. As you know, now The Atlantic, Goldberg is walking back his claim that they were war plans. He's now saying it wasn't war plans. So already he's, again, lying. But remember, and I just want to read the text because I think the text says it all, but here it is. This is from 617. By the way, again, you can text us 70470, 70470. Jeff, I like how Jeffrey Goldberg went from saying he couldn't possibly share the texts because they destroy national security to publishing them like 5 seconds later. These people are so unserious. He's a liar and a fraud. He's now released everything, literally everything. Everything. So, and by the way, 617 is completely right. I can play you the audio. We have the clips. We played them yesterday. He went on CNN. He went on MSNBC. He went everywhere. Oh, I can only release a little bit. Why? This is such a sensitive, classified information. It's undercover CIA agents. It's our war plans. Oh my God, this is such a high level of classification that people are going to get killed, for God's sakes, if I release this. And I'm a patriot. I'm Jeffrey Goldberg. I'm doing this for the country. So we can't release all of it. It's impossible. I didn't release it because I don't want to undermine national security. Now, to make a buck off of this scandal, because it's fizzing. It's fizzing. It's just, there's no question. It's fizzling out. Okay, it's fizzling out. The air has been popped from the balloon. So now $39.99. They got to get these $40 subscriptions. $39.99 and you can read the whole damn thing. And what is it? 12 issues, 11 issues, whatever it is a year. Okay? So now, all of a sudden, everything is being released. So it went from, oh my God. I mean, our James Bond is going to be exposed to, our 000 is going to be exposed. Covert CIA agent was added. Oh my God. They're putting everybody's life at risk. Now, how much? $29.99? Well, okay. Next 24 hours, $10 off. And we throw in all the text messages as a complimentary. But you got to subscribe, for the year. $29.99. I mean, it's disgusting. Honestly, it's disgusting. And these people are such jokes. And he shared everything already with Warner and Blumenthal and Wyden, the senators on the Intelligence Committee yesterday. And they were yelling at Gabbard and at Ratcliffe. Why won't you release all of it? They had it. They had the whole thing. Goldberg gave it to them before he released it to the public. So they're like, why won't you release it? What are you hiding? And they knew there's nothing in it. Nothing. 617-266-6868. My God, I swear. My God. Janet in Braintree. Thanks for holding, Janet, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi,
Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure, Janet.
I was just calling to say that I partially agree with Grace. The situation does need to be investigated, and I think everybody agrees with that. And I think Tulsi Gabbard handled it well. I disagree with her, though, about Hegseth. I think he is the man for the job. I think he's doing an excellent job. And I think the way he responded to questions about the situation were fine. He laid out exactly what a TDS-infected hack Goldberg was. At the same time, letting people know there was nothing, there were no war plans discussed, nothing top secret was discussed, and he did it in almost a mocking way towards Goldberg. And I think that's what we should do. We should mock the left. We should not add any fuel to their pearl-clutching hysteria fire that they have going. And I hope that Trump does not go after any of his secretaries and let them go, because it will start with one and it will never end. The left will, smell water, blood in the water, and they'll keep attacking.
Janet, if you don't mind me asking, what are you doing tonight?
Nothing.
Nothing. Do you mind coming over to my house for dinner? Do you mind? Because I could use I could use some help with my wife tonight, because that's exactly the debate I'm going to have with her over dinner tonight. Because I agree with you, not 100, but 1,000%. I disagree with her on Hegseth. I've always disagreed with her on Hegseth. She can't stand him. She thinks she thinks he's a frat boy. Just to sum it up, I mean, she'll give you a more complex, nuanced response. But if I was to sum it up in a sentence or a word or two words, she said, he's basically a frat boy. So she thinks he's out of his league, out of his depth to be defense secretary. I disagree. I completely disagree. And I agree with you I loved the way he handled it. When he came out swinging, when he said no war plans were discussed, period, full stop, in that strong categorical way, I'm like, I think Goldberg's lying. He's calling Goldberg's bluff. And it turns out he was vindicated. Goldberg is the one who's had to back down. Goldberg lied. Hegseth told the truth. So again, I look at Hegseth and again, Hegseth made another very good point. Look at he oversaw the operation in Yemen. I mean, I know there was input from other people, but of course it's President Trump who made the ultimate decision. But in terms of, the attack plan, the strategy, the operation, that's the Secretary of Defense. That was almost a flawless operation in Yemen. So I'm judging him by his results. I think so far he's been incredible. He's a warrior's warrior. But try to tell that to my wife. You know what I'm saying, Janet? That's why tonight, because what happens is, Janet, my kids always take the mother's side. So we're having dinner, and she and I are having a discussion, and then Ashton, supports mommy, and then Ava supports mommy, and then I'm basically outmanned and outgunned. So I could use some help at the dinner table. You know what I'm saying, Janet?
I'll be there, Jeff. I got your back. And I am glad that first operation was such a success, especially because, the incompetence of the Biden administration on one of their first major operations got 13 soldiers killed, and one lost a leg and an arm. So...
Brilliant.
I think we're doing good.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You're dead on. Janet, thank you very much for that call. Okay, I just want to read this text to all of you. It's a little bit off topic, but trust me, when I tell you to go see Shen Yun, this is why. Okay, 603. Jeff, let me just say this for one of your wonderful advertisers. For many years, I had wanted to see Shen Yun with my wife, but had just never gotten around to it. Thanks to your encouragement and prompting, last year my wife and I finally got tickets and took our daughter to a showing in Providence, Rhode Island. Jeff, no word of a lie. It was the most incredible show we had ever been to, and we would go again in a minute. The audience should know that Shen Yun really is that good. ShenYun.com. That's all I can say. Paul in New York. Thanks for holding, Paul, and welcome.
Morning, Kuhner.
Hi, Paul.
Hey, good morning. I just wanted to add my 2 cents in on this, which isn't worth much, but it doesn't make any logical sense at all that they would be on this app communicating, because the administration, when Trump moved in, the first thing they would do is set up a secure communication network, because they do this all the time. And, Elon does it, when you're running the country and you got all this power, you're going to have a secure network. You're going to have your own people running it. You shouldn't be using somebody else's, especially the one that Biden, I guess, helped build it on this, what do they call it, the Signal app?
Yes. No, Paul, look, I agree with you. I mean, I'm a little bit speechless. You know, I mean, I understand the reasoning. They're all explaining it, but I'm like, how could you trust the guy? You know, and I could play the cut again. There's no point. I played it earlier where Trump literally says, look, as far as I'm concerned, you know, he was being honest. He was like an open book. He goes, I want everything in the Situation Room. And he said just recently, he goes, I want to talk about it, but we made a big decision. We were talking about it in the Situation Room, and I had a few people on a phone line. And he said, and the phone line we believe was secure. No, it's not on some kind of an app. It's an actual hard phone line. And I said, no, knock them off. Close all the phones. If you're not here in the room, forget it. We'll brief you later. Because anything can be hacked, it could be leaked, whatever. I want everything in this room behind these four walls. That's it. That's it. Nothing else. And if we're going to do something on a phone, I agree with you. It's got to be something you're 1,000% sure of. And that's why I'm hoping, again, silver lining out of all this, he goes to Elon and say, I hate to do this to you, buddy. I know you got a lot on your plate. My God. Can you set us up with our own personal communications network? Something that's completely as foolproof as you can possibly get? Because you're right, Paul. He's got to be able to talk to his people and know he's not being spied on, surveilled, or hacked. Tom, red, white, and blue dynamite in New Jersey. I've got 1 minute. The floor is yours. Go.
Jeff Kuhner, bulldozing spies and traitors, one enemy at a time. That's red, white, and blue dynamite, baby. Jeff, you just, great minds think alike. And Professor Kuhner, that was my call. Elon Musk, once again, is the man for the job. Have him test the signal system. Come up. This guy can move rockets like we parallel park, Jeff. He's the man. Come up with another system in addition to signal. And, Jeff, the NSA, CIA, we got General Milley's in there. Come on. And Waltz, you're starting off with a real bad name, buddy. Pull in Waltz. Pull in Hegseth.
And tell him, all right, you got one mulligan. You got one mistake. You did it. Don't make a second one. Tom, thank you for that call. All right, to the callers, dynamite job today. Seriously, outstanding. Always great, but today, exceptionally good. And on that note, bye-bye.